There's no one closer to spirit than you to spirit. And if you put anything or anyone in the way, then you've already undercut yourself and sold yourself off to an idea that something or someone is greater than you. Are people fully aware? I'll give them the answer. They're not. That these products are hurting their health today, now. What environment are we creating to invite that same thing in? Go back to fear. If I'm in fear all the time, if I'm angry all the time, that is the environment of my being that I'm deciding to be, and that invites it in.
Darin Olien, welcome to the podcast. I usually start off with asking, what are you most excited about right now in your life? But I think I got this urge to start in a different direction with you because the last time we recorded a podcast, it's been over 2.5 years. And so much has changed between that time and now. You know, we worked together on Fatal Conveniences, researching some topics that we'll get into in this episode. You know, you recorded season 2 of Down to Earth. You know, I'm living in Madrid now. So much has happened. And, you know, I really have began to see you, even after that conversation, the first one that we ever had, I just started seeing you as like a deep mentor in my life and a really good friend. And just wanted to open up in the most vulnerable way possible and ask you the usual question of, how are you doing? How are you doing?
You know, you can easily answer that question from the higher level, and I'm always great. Always. Unaffected. And then there's the person that is walking on this earth, the avatar that I've chosen, and that avatar has chosen to take on some things that I care to make better in the world. I have not chosen to be passive in this world. So from that perspective, just going simply to answer your question, it's always I'm challenged because I'm challenging myself. So status quo doesn't look like that. That doesn't add up to thriving for me. So I choose. So again, just to reiterate, from my higher self, I'm thriving, always unfeathered, untethered, just, and obviously the making that connection strong every day is very, very necessary to the avatar, Darin, here, working on many levels, participating in participating in having a better world. So I'm challenged every day, but I say yes to it. It's a challenge to walk this earth. You know, so I don't know what the feeling is around that. I don't know how I can respond in that way, but it's a healthy tension. It's a healthy tension between I'm committed and I'm tired at the same time, really, right?
A paradox,
right? It's a paradox. So, and I'm inspired, and I'm need to rest.
Mm.
And yeah, so I mean, your questions always invoke like some deep introspection, and I appreciate that. Uh, so yeah, I'm good,
Mm.
and I'm here,
Yeah.
and I'm here face forward, um, and I'm here in the spirit of my ancestors too. And my father was a dedication to this last endeavor of this book, so uh, he suffered, and so I'd rather not have people suffer unnecessarily. Um, it's like when you learn something, you, you don't unlearn it.
Mm.
And so, yeah, that's the that's the path I'm choosing, and I wouldn't choose another one.
Hmm. And I think it really takes an evolved perspective, let's say, to be able to tell yourself that the avatar that I chose is living this sort of life, encountering these sorts of challenges, and taking on this sort of mission for itself. And really, not a lot of people can view their life in that way, from that higher self, from that higher perspective. And I know, you get up at 3:30 in the morning, 3 to 4 hours before you need to do anything, just to ask yourself those sorts of questions, of giving yourself a higher perspective of reality. And I was wondering what sort of messages are coming through for you right now when you go into that, in that silence, into that avatar perspective, let's say, of your life. What sort of messages are coming through for you and also for humanity?
Mm. Well, I mean, some of the shadow and the shadow of what I kind of was saying is illuminated through that, and um, from a global perspective and a large human population perspective, I mean, it's in so many ways upside down, and upside down means that uh, people and things and swaths of governments and you name it around the world are doing things that are antithetical towards the thriving of our human race. And um so I'm grateful for that, because every day, I mean, this is dramatic every day, but literally every week is accurate, when I'm in touch with exploring opportunities of what other people are doing as a result of things that are not working.
Mm-hmm.
So I see the mission of people coming forward in service to things that aren't working. So you then ask yourself, well, I think many people are seeing things in a Twilight Zone kind of way right now. And that's a good thing. Let's get it out of the shadow. Let's get it out. Let's get it out, however it's coming out. And so that we can rearrange this life in a way that is potentially better. But not from a totalitarian perspective. And in fact, the other, right? A human sovereign, human family, and certainly the water, power, food, shelter, kind of cauldron of opportunity for people. So from that perspective, yeah, that just plays every day. And so big projects that are going to take time, I'm working on pragmatically and physically with extraordinary amount of people, great people, and we can certainly unpack any of that stuff. And then from a individual perspective, it's literally just taking the hand of spirit, God, Christ, universe, every day. How may I be of service? And attuning to that space and that consciousness. I don't know what I would do if I didn't have that tether line. I really don't. I mean, it's already hard, and life is already hard enough. So I mean, that's my mental health. I've been doing it for half of my life at this point, and that is my necessary application of my mental health, and also just where I'm putting my focus. What am I doing? Why am I here? Aligning the pragmatic things that I'm very much doing in the world has to attune itself to that same space, or else I'm just not into it. I'm just not interested. I don't have the desire. So that also says to me that many things I also have to say no to because it doesn't line up with. And I'm also super, more than ever, would rather focus on the relationships and the trust of those relationships and building the infrastructure from there, rather than looking out to find the next greatest thing. I would rather incubate relationships and connection and with the people that I trust and have performed and have demonstrated that. I'd rather do that than always, getting distracted out here. That's what I'm super aware of right now. And is very clear to me right now.
Yeah, about a little over a year ago, I was in California, and it was a really special time in my life because I did feel that a lot of, I want to say, dark forces were coming at me in many different directions. And also at the same time, I feel like when those dark forces or challenges, adversities, you could call them, appear in our lives, when we hold on to this higher guidance, we're just, shown the way. We're just shown where we need to go, the people we need to talk to. I found myself in that moment in California. I remember I hit you up, and then, just things like the universe lined up. I didn't even have a car in California. I was there living in my friend's couch for a month, waiting to do this interview with Dr. Joe. And, his girlfriend one day, like, she offered to drive me to Malibu. We were in Huntington Beach, an hour and a half away. And I was like, this is amazing. I was going to make it there regardless. I was going to walk there if I had to, but it was a really special, couple of hours that we spent. And I even just wrote down right after we talked, just one thing that stood out. And I wrote down, and I have it here in my notes, which is we are the captains and stewards of our own soul. We were not meant to be living other people's lives or agendas. The most important basic right is personal freedom and sovereignty. When we begin to get coerced, manipulated, and stripped of the leadership of our own lives, we must take a stand and speak up. So I don't know if anything in there resonates right now with where you're currently at, but that was one thing that I extracted immediately from just all the wisdom that you shared with me. Where are you at right now with that?
Yeah, well, both. I think both from a pragmatic standpoint to a spiritual standpoint. Number one, certainly, like, the incredible work and life of Viktor Frankl shows that we have sovereignty within ourselves that is untouched by anything or anyone ever, under any circumstances. So we have to first acknowledge the sovereignty of ownership of our soul, our spirit, our our guidance is there's no middle person. There's no middle thing. It's that direct line between you and spirit and God or Christ or whatever you want to call it. So that's number one. We have to acknowledge that stuff, that you don't have a person that is closer to, there's no one closer to spirit than you, than you to spirit. And if you put anything or anyone in the way, then you've already undercut yourself and sold yourself off to an idea that something or someone is greater than you. Now, there's great mentors, there's great assistants, there's great insight, there's great sages and gurus and people along the way. And there's great strangers that dump wisdom, right? So
some strangers become angels, literally.
Yeah. I mean, talk to anyone, ask them a good question, and they will give you wisdom, guaranteed, right? And then I think on the other side, the sovereignty of, like, when I'm staring at, what I wrote in my book of, from all these fatal conveniences of personal care products and food and electromagnetic fields and, what kind of bottles we're drinking out of, what kind of chemicals and lotions and shampoos and conditioners and deodorant, what is that? And it's like, okay, there's a lot of this stuff, most of it, if you're not going out of your way to do it, to find a healthy product, the majority of the products have some sort of, unfortunately, I didn't make this up, carcinogenic, endocrine disrupting, cancer causing, stress response of the immune system, free radical species, like, you name it, they're hitting some sort of angle in undermining your health. So that is stripping you of a vibrancy and of a life force that, unbeknownst to you, because you don't expect to buy a product that has a known forever chemical of a derivative of Teflon. Why is that in a product, right? And why are the 60 to 80,000 chemicals created every year in our atmosphere, in our environments, why are they mostly not being tested? 1,500 maybe are tested individually at certain safety standards. None of these chemicals, none of these multiple products you're putting on are ever tested as they interact with one another. Ever. Nothing. And so you add in carcinogenic number 1 from the lotion, carcinogenic number 2 from the deodorant, endocrine disrupting parabens from the lipstick, to the hairspray, you just go to the clothes, to the elastic jeans that are full of petroleum and endocrine disrupting and neutering and testosterone lowering. And you're going, whoa. Right. So I spent 2.5 years you got a glimpse of it with the Fatal Conveniences podcast. Holy shit, dude.
Yeah.
Like 2.5 years, 20 researchers, professional fact checkers, like, whoa, man. I pulled the string and I was like, oh my God, each chapter could be its own book.
Yeah.
And so suffice it to say, are people fully aware? I'll give them the answer. They're not. That these products are hurting their health today, now. So I'll ask all your listeners right now. Did you put on deodorant? Did you wash your hair? Did you put lotion on? Did you put clothes on? Are you going to take a shower? You're going to drink water?
Do you play with crayons?
Are you gonna play with crayons? Like, your kids playing with crayons? Are your kids wearing disposable diapers? Like, you name it. I guarantee, unless you're the people that have spent their lives trying to figure out clean products and safe products, all of you have been exposed to products that are undermining your health. And in the face of these regulatory agencies that are not doing their job effectively. And I'm sure there's great people within these organizations trying to do the great thing, but largely they know about these chemicals and are not regulating them effectively on human health. So that, to answer, that is stripping away people unknowingly to them of optimal health. And in fact, sprinting them in certain cases, sprinting them through towards cancer and disrupting their regulatory hormones of their body. And over time, that exposure, think about all of those things. I could have named 20 other things that you're using today that are causing similar things. And so imagine that's today. And then you wake up tomorrow and you do the same thing the next day, the next week, the next month, the next year, the next 10 years, the next 20, next 30, next 40, next 50. And what have you been swimming in? You've been swimming in a chemical romance of chemical soup. So that is what I am not okay with. Because like before we started this thing, my father suffered from this stuff. So I was exposed, pun intended, I was exposed to this stuff from my dad. When he was in, I was in college and it was in the 90s. And I'm seeing a brilliant, loving man, highly intelligent, highly engaged, lose mental faculties. And we're not talking dementia or anything but literally smelling a fragrance, smelling an off-gassing from a t-shirt that you and I are not feeling acutely, stunting him in his life, forced retirement, depression creating a cascade effect of leading him to picking up a drink of alcohol after 30 years of sobriety. So do I think it was linked to him dying from breaking sobriety in these chemical exposures? Abso-freaking-lutely. So when you see your greatest mentor being dropped in the face of an invisible danger that then for the many years of my life, more people were telling me about this. Dr. Mohsen Hurmanish, an amazing researcher, gave me the term fatal conveniences when he was telling me about 25 years ago about the electrical field influence that cell phones were having on RNA and DNA signaling. Because how do they, it's not just chemical, it's a frequency, it's an electromagnetic deliverance of information, all electrical in its arrangements, not just electrical, but a big part of the electrical coming together of proteins from all the amino acids and so tumors and human tumors and gliomas and all of these things all throughout the research. For the last 15-20 years, they have known in mice and other mammals that this happens as a result of proximity to cell phones. Why so what's happening? So the rabbit hole that I went down just in that chapter alone was so disturbing. I pumped the brakes on the chapter. I pumped the brakes because I'm like, I don't have enough time to unpack it all because it's looking like it is bigger than the tobacco industry's lying for 40 years about how smoke was fine. So running through me is seeing my father suffer and his life being kind of undermined buy a t-shirt, buy a deodorant, buy a paint, buy a couch, buy a perfume. His life was stripped. Now we may have a higher tolerance, but there's thousands of people in this world today that have chemical sensitivities, that have electromagnetic sensitivities. So many people, their lives are absolutely destroyed. And our lives, I would make the argument, ours are too, because the slow onslaught of these chemicals are definitely hurting your biology, without a doubt. And so it's undermining us without the proper umbrella of someone really having our back. So these are organizations like the Environmental Working Group. Obviously, they're doing great work. I referenced a lot of their studies. Campaign for Safe Cosmetics, another great one in the personal care and cosmetic and all of that space. Women, the amount of exposure they're getting through their cosmetics, through their beauty products is just astonishing, right? So it's not okay, man. These dangerous chemicals are prevalent in our, I mean, we see things like, we haven't used DDT since the 70s. It was banned in the 70s. Well, guess what's still here? DDT in the water.
What is DDT?
So it's a Agent Orange and a bunch of stuff they used in pesticides and agriculture, and it's a dangerous bioweapon that they used, right? So, but it was used to wipe out certain parts of the forest and things like that, and warfare, and let's just use it in agriculture. It's insane, right? So these things persist. And there's these class of chemicals also called forever chemicals. And that they're given that name for a reason, because they forever bioaccumulate. So, and the thing that I found blaringly obvious as I did this book was, if this t-shirt that has nylon, which is plasticizers and petroleum weaved in with your cotton, that's harmful for you. It's because it's on your skin. Not to mention the formaldehydes, the azo dyes, the carcinogenic compounds. Do you know how many chemicals it takes to make a t-shirt, an average t-shirt? Do you know how many? 8,000. 8,000. And you know what the number one clothing item that's bought around the planet are? T-shirts. Right? So now think about that. 8,000 chemicals per t-shirt. It's about a gallon of water per I think it's a gallon of water per pound of cotton. No. I take that back. It is, there's so many different stats with some of this stuff. It's there showed some reports that it's about 2,200 liters of water per t-shirt from growing to, so think about, so the thing that was obvious is, if this is harmful to me, because now the shirt is not just this material that you think is just material. It's a water bottle. It's a plastic. It's on you. And so that's why many people don't realize that the clothing industry, as an example, is the second largest polluter on the planet. Clothing. Why? Because it's all of these weaves and nylons and petroleum, and with all of these chemicals, your microbiome, your ecosystem is being absolutely affected by this. And so it's inherently connected to the massive ecosystem, because all of the water, all of the dyes, all of the dumping that this has now in the environment, which is also doing the same thing it's doing to you, affecting your endocrine, it's affecting your endocrine system. So it's neutering frogs. It's, the frogs now can't replicate. It's hurting the fish. It's like it's polluting and deoxygenizing bodies of water. So again, as within, so without. The inherent danger it has on you as a child, a parent, a mother, an infant, it's inherently has to be destructive for the environment. Because just by the way it's being manufactured and the way it's affecting you is inherently destructive towards nature herself. So speaking about the globe is really about speaking about what's going on here. What's going on here? And now if we start to turn that dial, Emilio, if we start to understand and we wake up going, shit, I didn't know I was being exposed. I didn't know my child was being exposed to these plasticizers, these phthalates, which makes plastic malleable, which what do you think a diaper is? Very malleable. Chemicalized, malleable, disposable plastic that's seeping into your sweet unborn sweet child, infant. Now that you know that, let's do something different. Okay. And what we can do is, okay, let's just save a little extra money and never have to throw away diapers again. Let's just buy organic cotton and let's just wash them. How about that? Let's buy undyed organic cotton for your child and let's just wash them and reuse them.
Yeah, and many of the solutions, here's the thing with the fatal conveniences, because always, I remember when we were doing some of the research on the fatal conveniences, at the end, there was always this optimistic lens. There's always a solution to every problem. Like just how there's always a solution. And the reason why it's called a convenience is because people might say, oh, it's going to take me way longer to wash, this diaper every single day. And but what's the alternative to that? And it's that fatal aspect to your health, to your long-term, your aging. There's so many different things that can happen that are fatal, just for people to understand what fatal conveniences really means. It's something that's going on. It's like, oh, it's easy to put my food in a microwave, but when you put your food in the microwave, you're literally changing the chemical. Yeah, in plastic, you're changing the chemical structure of your food. It's dead food, essentially. It's a whole rabbit hole. And I remember feeling a little bit overwhelmed as well, just going into that research. But also understanding the fact that, and also a lot of ancient sages have been saying this for centuries, that once humanity enters sort of this, what they were calling the Aquarian age, which is the age of information. So we saw the rise of the internet. Like just a normal person, I was in Colombia doing this research, just simple Google questions and discovering all these things. It's power to the people when they understand that they have the power just to dig into the truths behind what they're consuming, the truths of, even nature in itself. You can find answers wherever you look. What would you say is sort of one of the biggest truths you've discovered throughout all of your own research and diving into things that not a lot of people are diving into?
Well, without a shadow of a doubt, the truth that someone else is taking care of you and it's off over there, that you can feel comfortable taking your hard-earned money and buying a product, That doesn't exist. Sorry to say.
Hmm.
I didn't make it up. I wish I never had to do any of this stuff. Emilio, I wish I could focus on other stuff. I wish my dad didn't suffer. I wish this wasn't true.
Yeah.
So what's the biggest truth? The biggest truth is ain't no one gonna do it for you. We think in some dystopian kind of way, we think the government's got our back, or we think that the FCC has got our back, or the FDA's got our back, or the USDA's got our back, or the EPA's got our back. You name it, you keep going. Again, they have done some good things in the world. There are some great people in those organizations that are trying. But largely, the fact that I can still see these infinite amount of chemicals in our environment, and most of them carcinogenic and endocrine disrupting, proves to me that that's not the case. So I wish that we could just stick this off and not have to think about it. And there's a bunch of people listening here that will. They're just going to turn this off and they're not going to think about it. They don't want to, I just want to live my life. That's fine. Your avatar, your body, has got to deal with your point of view. It's got to walk through this world of exposure, what's in the air and the water and the clothes and in your environment. That's fine. That's fine. It's not my job to convince anybody. Zero, no interest. I will give you some information. Do with it what you want. Right? I'm just coming from the place, I don't want to be slowly poisoned through chemicals in products that should be safe. Don't want to do it. I don't want to purchase products that are on one hand convenient for me, on the other hand poisonous. It's criminal, but it exists. So I'm not going to go down this whole path of like, why? I don't know why. But through infinite amount of research and studies that are out there in the world, it exists. And what I love about life, it will meet you if you're willing to step in honestly. So I'm stepping in honestly. I could do a lot of other things, but I had to do out of a choice to do this book because I want people to honestly take the information in, assimilate it how they want, and at least make one action towards relieving themselves of a poisonous or a detrimental product that's undermining their health, their child, whatever, right? That's the deal. And so radically being honest is a really good path. It is not comfortable. You know this. You've been working on yourself. You're an extraordinary human.
Thank you.
And you know that in order for something to change, you got to first get to the point like shit ain't working. What am I doing that is allowing this to happen? What am I wrestling with? Why am I wrestling with the devil here? What am I doing? What am I unwilling to look at about myself? Only then can you have the awareness and the reception of something extraordinary. All I really want, Emilio, is I want people to have the extraordinary. And I know that they won't if they're dragging around a body that's broken and it sucks and it's not performing. It's just a painful life. It's a painful life that I saw squarely on the first mentor of my life, my father. So when I am in the world, I am pained by what I see. I go to the airport, I go back home, I see people consuming things that I'm just going, oh my God, I just read a study on that. And they have no idea.
Changes
oh my
your
God,
worldview a little bit.
it changes your worldview. So here's here's a big optimizing thought that I have.
Mm.
You know what we have on our side? There's the people listening. We have numbers, man. We have numbers upon numbers, compounding effect. We have the numbers of awareness, and then we have the numbers of choice. We have the numbers of action, and then all that connected to the dollars we're spending, the voting that we're saying for any said product. And so for your listeners, because you go into these realms, we're also saying, no, man. Not only am I saying no to toxicity in my physical world, I'm saying no to the consciousness that is someplace in there has allowed this to be fucking okay. No. So my vision and my path may be saying, don't use that deodorant that has aluminum in it because it's very dangerous, connected to lymphatic. Don't want that inhibiting your immune system. You don't want that carcinogenic activity. Use this one over here. This is a safe product. This is using essential oils. This is safe, man.
Mm.
And so you shift our consciousness to like, okay, maybe it's $1 extra. We'll fucking figure it out.
Yeah.
Right? And now I'm saying, okay, I'm going to spend, not all of them are, you can freaking DIY your own deodorant, for God's sakes, right? So it doesn't always have to be money. Most importantly, the consciousness of wealth, we have to shift society in. So now that symbol of that dental floss that has that toxic PFAS in it, we're saying no. Thank you for making it slippery, but I'm not buying that because it's toxic for my mouth and it's toxic to my kidney that's linked to cancer. And that was from a real study.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not making it up. So our ability here, my need, my intention here is to wake people up, flip on the common sense switch, and go, I'm sorry to tell you that the organizations that you think has your back doesn't. But us as a human family, we can. Let's do this. So the moms out there, moms, the mama bears, the moms that have raised kids and men and females, the mama bears that will do anything in their life to protect their children. It's time, mama bears. We need to be aware that certain products are not good for us. So yeah, man, stripping it all away, it's a spiritual freaking message.
It is. It is. And I was just finishing up watching the second season of Down to Earth the other day. And I feel like for you, you've been over, around 20 years running around the world, talking to these Aboriginal people that have never seen a cell phone in their life, and they're living a completely different lifestyle. And you guys highlight a little bit of that in the series. I wanted to highlight some of that Aboriginal wisdom from these indigenous people that you've learned from. Even in the show, we learned about how fire could be used as a healer, maybe even preventing some of the huge wildfires that are going on in the world. What would, let's say, the chief or the healer, the medicine woman of ancient tribe right now be telling the modern human right now? What would they be telling us?
Well, I would like to sit there and listen to them say that too. So I couldn't possibly put words in their mouth, whoever they may be, but I think that we underestimate what we know to be true. And we've been dumbed down by our own societal conveniences. And that I don't know if it's right or wrong. I don't know if it's right and wrong. I don't know if it's but we have broken apart so much from our core of love and connection. And care for another human or another sentient being, another animal, all for what? I think maybe one of the things that they would say in some way, but the way I would say it is we've made God into something that was never meant to be God. And we've made God into money and power over the overarching God of love in our world, in our society. So if you've made God power and money, inherently you've undercut the fabric that connects all of us. Because that God doesn't care about another life. And so we are doing that right now. This is the reality. I'm staring at, you know how many times, Emilio, that I've recorded these fatal conveniences and I've been staring at this research. You know how many times I've out loud to myself, by myself, going, what the fuck?
You can sometimes even live in the recording, you're like, oh.
Yeah, because I'm like, because I've looked at it, and then when I'm actually in it, recording it again, I just go, I don't fucking get it.
Yeah.
It makes me, on the one hand, just absolutely, it's crazy making. But I don't get how you can be talking about a known carcinogen as an entity, call it the FDA. You can have a blog about it, and then it's all over in these products, and you're not regulating it. Or it's a trade secret in a fragrance that they then are not required to divulge. What?
Wait, say it again about the trade secret. I didn't know about that.
Oh. So fragrances and perfumes have formulas, and there are sometimes hundreds and hundreds of chemicals, even thousands of interactions to make certain fragrances smell like a musk or whatever, right? They have, a few ingredients in there, but then they can just all of a sudden call out a class of their formula, a proprietary blend. It's a trade secret. Yeah. So therefore, because they've said that, they're not liable and required to say what's in it. So that could be hundreds. And there has been studies. There's like, you break that open and study that, and they're carcinogenic, endocrine disrupting. It's just littered with all of that, and is a loophole around the regulatory bodies. And it's very similar in the natural flavor world and artificial flavor world. Anytime you start calling out a trade secret, they get a loophole.
Yeah.
So, I've been in literally 15 years ago, I was in shouting matches with heads of supplement companies and natural flavor companies because they're like, well, they're natural. Yeah, but I just told you don't put propylene glycol in the freaking formula. Well, that's under the natural flavor. That's okay. Yeah, but I just told you it's not okay for me, for this formula. Yeah, but that's okay. And like, oh my God. So it's, it's so pervasive and it's so idiotic, and it's just, it becomes more valuable to put out a product and charge people money to buy it than the health, safety of the people buying it. The whole thing is flipped on top of its head. The whole thing is the reverse. The whole thing is a twilight zone. So as you're staring at one fatal convenience after another and one ingredient and they're going, I don't understand how this is possible. How is this legal for people to sell this? How is it legal to still have plastic water bottles that is so damaging to humans, so damaging to the environment? Because those plasticizers mimic estrogen. And it's neutering us. The levels of testosterone have plummeted. The motility of men are projected to not be viable sperm in the next 10, 20 years. Done.
And no amount of maca superfood can can help with that, or what?
Well, I mean, certainly eating better and staying away from ultra processed food, because that's another fatal convenience. Yeah. Ultra processed food, yeah, you can easily demonize it. And yeah, it's not real food. Yeah, for sure. And it's a bunch of chemicals. And those same chemicals are pervasive throughout your damn personal care and clothing. And it's just absolutely insane. If you wanted to actually hurt humans, if you were somehow an alien going, how could we hurt people without them knowing? Just keep doing what we're doing. The Mayo Clinic put out a study, fairly conservative, based on what people ate, based on activity, based on lifestyle, working out a few times a week. In America, of the 330 million people here, to stamp in what I just said, if you want to try to hurt people, keep doing what you're doing. You know how many people were deemed healthy? 2.7% only that were actually moderately healthy. 2.7, not 27, wow. It's not 20, it's not 80. It's 2.7. We are sprinting towards absolute annihilation. And is it acute? Nope. It's pervasive over time. A little bit of exposure that's slowly turning the lights out. Slowly getting your energy off whack. Slowly not allowing you to heal. slowly creating stress in your body because those things build up. Some of the half-life of some of these chemicals might leave in a few hours, but the thing is you're exposed to it a few hours later anyway, because you're putting on deodorant, or you're putting on that nylon underwear, or you're shampooing, or you're put that cell phone up to your head. All of these things. Stress. Low grade stress that all of a sudden you aren't operating all that great. And now you're a statistic of a person that is not motivated, doesn't have energy, don't know why you're depressed. And then it further begets the whole thing, because it's very addictive to eat more processed food, to continue to create an environment that, it's a snake kind of eating its own tail. So it is ridiculous. It's just utterly ridiculous, Emilio. So what do we do? Just one thing at a time.
Yeah.
Don't get overwhelmed. Just one thing at a time. Don't use a water bottle. Buy a glass bottle. Buy a filter. Maybe young people listening to this, buy an RO filter for, maybe $150. And now you never have to buy, quote unquote, you never have to really buy a plastic water bottle again. Clean your water, because there's a lot of chemicals, pesticides, herbicides, phthalates, pharmaceuticals that have been flushed down the toilet for years and years and years. They haven't filtered the water for those things. They've only filtered the water for microbes that are not going to kill you upon contact, basically. So the chlorines and all of these other agro fertilizer runoffs, chemicals of the 80,000 we're putting in our atmosphere, guess where all of it ends up? In the soil, affecting the bugs and the plants and the mammals and the fish, and it's in the water table, and then that water table is right back to you in a vicious, gnarly cycle.
And staying on that topic of water, this is like a huge topic that we also covered in the last conversation, but as I was digging into it a bit recently, when you were talking about this, is that, with this fourth phase of water that Gerald Pollack discovered, you said there's a huge relation between water and the quantum field. And we've talked a lot about the quantum field on the show, and then the whole conversation with Dr. Joe. Like, what is that relationship that you found out about this water and then the quantum field? How are those two related?
This goes into so many things that it goes beyond kind of a normal understanding of the physical matter. So they start to, Gerald Pollack, anyone doesn't know, the fourth phase of water, like, he discovered this, this exclusion zone, this interaction that the water has when it bumps up against a membrane, i.e. the cell, is where he first saw it. And he has all this data and actin and myosin and muscle contraction. That's where his physiology was first most of his life. And then the water interaction, he discovered this phase that would happen with water. The protons and electrons would basically create a battery when it came up against this non-permeable membrane. And then upon looking at it, that the protons and electrons would go to the other side, and this zone within the water which now is called the exclusion zone, is basically this clean, desalinated, charged water, and some say it's H3O2. So it's now it's acting like gel. Yeah. So it's not vapor, it's not the same water, and it's not ice, but it's acting as this gel. And so there's the only matrix that they could come up with was this H3O2 arrangement. They're like, what? And The other side of it was it created energy in that interaction coming up against you're like, what? So now it's giving energy by the way of that transference or transmutation into that fourth phase. And then, so I'm deep in the rabbit hole. I met Gerald Pollack at the Bulgarian Water Conference in 2019. So I'm there with some of the top scientists on the planet. Also met for the first time Dr. Luc Montagnier, was Nobel Prize winner for discovering HIV. Right? Just a little caveat. Dr. Fauci tried to steal his Nobel Prize back in the day. So he was fighting with Dr. Fauci way back then. But that's a whole nother rabbit hole. So here's one of the most brilliant minds on the planet. Front row at the freaking conference. So they're starting to, it's so hard to do studies based in quantum reality because it obviously it changes. But yeah. So think of water potentially as a blank hard drive. So like anything on your computer, if you intend it to be saved, hard drive doesn't care. So it just saves whatever the hell you're wanting to save. Doesn't have a point of view. Now think of that construct as it relates to water, right? Water seems to have that same ability to take in information. You could call it frequency, you could call it magnetics, you could call it intention, you could call it whatever. And they started to do so 4 days that I'm just using the Bulgarian Water Conference as kind of a jump off point, but 4 days of guys giving their all day long, giving their research around the miraculousness of water. And these are freaking some of the top scientists in the US, some top scientists from Ukraine, Russia, like
smart people.
the smartest group of people I've ever been in one proximal place to.
Wow.
Like mind melting. I couldn't follow 65% of it. It was just way too over. Like I didn't know I couldn't do it. And Montagnier did some studies, and I'm going to botch this because I don't know all of the details. But he did some studies where apparently he had physical DNA in water in a glass. Next to it, he had nothing. He put those together, and in a very short amount of time, meaning he put them next to each other, like touching, he could then take the one that did not have the physical DNA. In some way, it sent the memory over to the water that had nothing in it, and they could measure the DNA in that empty glass that was next to the one that had physical, so they could get the information from the quote unquote empty glass of the DNA that was physicalized over here. Yeah. Going, what? That is one of hundreds of stories that they started to talk about in terms of this. Again, go back to the blank hard drive. The blank hard drive of water is whatever you do to it, it's going to take on that potential energy, frequency, magnetism, you name it. It is a conductor. And there's also further and further experiments to because of the matrix of water itself, the ability to literally have water be a hard drive is very, very real. So a drop is like a room full of real hard drives that they could put the amount of information in a drop of water.
Yeah.
So they're looking at that kind of matrix to physically being able to put information in and to use it and extract it at will. So some of those studies were doing. So yeah.
And I don't want people to walk away from that, what you just said, and be like, oh, water is super cool. Like Bill Nye, the science guy, should make a video about it, whatever. Like, what does that, because that's extraordinary what you just mentioned about water. Like what, and take into account we are made up of that material. So what does that mean then for humanity? How does the science transfer to this meaning behind how we can use that information to know the power of who we truly are?
Well, think about let's just not, central nervous system, the brain, over 90% water, right? So let's just sit with that for a second. So now, what are the thoughts, feelings, and emotions that you're telling yourself every day? So just taking in that blank hard drive effect of water and the water that's in you, is it a perpetuating memory loop that you are creating in your own water? Or are you intending something different? Or are you stepping in to go, hey man, I'm a conscious, loving being, and the more, maybe the root of that, more of a question, maybe the root of intentional living and positive words and positive outlooks, maybe that is also interacting with the water to help you facilitate that forward. Maybe it's the biggest conductor of it all. Maybe, right? Maybe you're talking to the water more than you're talking to your brain. Maybe the water is expressing a lie that you've told yourself or a truth that you told yourself. Maybe. And then breaking it all the way down to what's coming out of your sink. Clean your water. Get the physical material out of your water. Take a pinch of Himalayan crystal salt, add some electrolytes in, because that's a physical conductor of energy that you need, right? You need salts, you need the electrolytes in order for conduction to happen, for cells to communicate and all of that stuff. So get that pure water, add the electrolytes back in. And now to start playing with some of that stuff, even if it's not true, it still is good for you to pray. Even if it's not true and you don't believe anything that I just said, put your water in a good glass. See all that that good etching? You can't really see it in here, but it's all sacred geometry.
Yes.
And the frequency of this blue, it's actually a little Buddha on this side.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyone listening, I have a little blue glass, and this color blue is a frequency that resonates apparently to the healthy vibratory frequency of your cell. So now light passes through here. It energizes to a similar frequency. Light is frequency on the spectrum, so it's not too woo-woo. Understand, right? And so even if none of that is true, this glass is now not in plastic. This water is not in plastic, it's in glass. Even if I take a second and go, I'm grateful for this water, it's just good for you to do that anyway. It's good for you to pause. It's good for you. We know that the reverence of something beyond ourselves is good. We know that taking a pause, down regulating ourselves into parasympathetic nervous system is better than staying stressed. So even if you don't believe anything that any of these researchers are doing or what I'm saying, still good for you, regardless.
Darren, this is
Cheers.
a question. Cheers. I have a little cacao in here with all the medicinal mushrooms that you mentioned. This is a question that you might not get asked a lot because people don't like to ask these sort of questions, but when was the last time you were sick?
It was 2 years ago when I got exposed to someone with COVID. and I felt weird for about 24 hours, but I didn't have any symptoms. I just felt a little foggy. And then 24 hours later, before that, I can't remember when.
Wow.
So that was my exposure to COVID, was just a little bit of a,
little...
a little bit of a wobble. I didn't have a lot of energy, but also, listen, I've been all over the world. I've exposed myself to microbes all over the world. I've come back from Africa feeling like I was gonna die, right? High temperatures, and I still, even still through that, I had my wife at the time, Eliza, was there. So I wasn't just on my own. Like, she was there and she was seeing me just go through hell. Actually, you know what? Yeah. So that was gnarly, and it was a high temperature. But in the back of my mind, I'm going, I trust my body. So I was always tuning in. And my mom would call, and I told my mom, okay, if it keeps going and I can't get my temperature to come down, I'll go to the hospital, right? But it's that faith that I have. And listen, I'll blast myself, vitamin C, vitamin K, vitamin D, you name it. Camu, I'm definitely very liberal when it comes to taking a huge amount of superfoods, super nutrients. But yeah, I mean, I feel bad for people that certainly get the crap beat out of them all the time. But again, that also could be a symptom of the exposure of kind of what we've been talking about with these other things, because it's affecting us, and it's worldwide at this point.
So in a nutshell, then, what is your view now on illness and disease?
I mean, it's always an opportunity. I mean, is there really illness? Is there really disease? There's manifestations of a lot of things. And, something that reads very true for me, and it's this doctor friend of mine, Dr. Michael Rankin, and he deals with stage 4 cancers and extreme things. And it's sad sometimes. He goes, God, I was with this girl, and she's 25 years old, and she's been burned and chemoed and just beaten up. And I asked him finally one day, he goes, how much of from a cold to the extreme cancer do you think that there's an emotional component? He goes, 100%, all the time, every time. So we can physicalize many things, and we can make it about these other things, but these other things also have a root in the emotional side. I mean, clearly you're not a kid who's 6 months old who has leukemia. Clearly that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the majority of the things that we are inflicting and inflicted upon us that always have an emotional component. So we have to deal in those realities too. We have to let go of judgments and anger and fear. My God, we got to let go of that. That will kill us. That will do it all. That's the biggest fatal convenience we have. Is pretending everything's okay when it's not. Acknowledging, I'm afraid, I'm angry, if those things are not acknowledged, you can't exercise them out of your body. You can't move that energy. I'm not saying stay a victim. I'm not saying be that. I'm not saying you are that. I'm saying you got to move the energy. Stagnant energy, stagnant water will create disease, period.
Yeah. And what does stagnation look like in nature? I heard you say that once.
It looks like putrefaction. Like, it looks like, it invites in the bacteria, virus, vermin. It creates an environment, and that environment invites it in. Think about it. What environment are we creating to invite that same thing in? Go back to fear. If I'm in fear all the time, if I'm angry all the time, that is the environment of my being that I'm deciding to be. And that invites it in. Moving through energy is different than inviting that, staying with it, staying in judgment, staying kind of angry towards things and people and all of that stuff. Forgiveness, love, moving through that stuff. Even in the face of, I don't know why, but I forgive in spite of it all. So we have to be aware of the environments that we're creating. And that will, I say this in my Super Life book. You go put trash out on the street, and then the trash guy doesn't show up. What happens? All the critters show up to do their job. What if there was nothing wrong with it? Do you want to create that environment, or do you want to do something different? So we got to clean it up, and it takes a personal responsibility for all of it. No one's going to do it for you. Everyone's got to put the big boy, big girl pants back on. And, I wish it wasn't the case, but it is the case.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate everything that you're doing. I feel like if you look at humanity as a whole, everyone is playing a role in, like, as a cell in the whole organism of what humanity is. And I think, the role that you're playing right now really is to, as you said, wake and shake people up, but also bring out certain truths that have been hidden for a long time. And I think once those truths come out and people start sharing and bringing it into their awareness, into their consciousness, that then reflects their habits, reflects how they act in the world, it's going to be a completely new earth in a couple of years. And I just wanted to honor you for making that stride, putting in all the effort that you've been putting in for that new earth to happen. And, I know my young generation is backing you. And truly, brother, it's an honor. I feel like when we talk, it's like no time. This conversation felt like no time. And I know you have big things to do. I wanted to wrap up. We end every podcast with a segment called the Final Trio. So they're just rapid fire questions to bring everything home, and you can answer in any way that you want. But before that, where would you tell people to head over to find you? Anything new that you're announcing? You mentioned you're relaunching the Baruca nuts, the healthiest nut in the world, which I'm going to be in Miami in a couple days, and I'm going to go to Whole Foods and be like, where are my Barucas?
Nice.
But yeah, where would you send people to connect with you?
Yeah, so DarinOlien.com. They can sign up for my newsletter. I'm always sneaking out cool information, new information on there. So you can sign up for my newsletter, and then Darin Olien on all social, and then the Darin Olien Show podcast places. So it's all there.
And people can pre-order. When is the book actually launching?
May 16th.
May 16th.
Yeah, you can pre-order it now.
Uh-huh.
Barnes & Noble, of course, Amazon, all those places. And it's a tool.
Yes.
You can open up the book anywhere and learn something, and then empower yourself. And that's the point.
Is it one of those like fat ones? Is it like going to be like a hardcover, like Ben Greenfield type?
No. It's not, I mean, could have been, but it's no. I shaped it so it's not too crazy. Yeah.
I mean, 20 researchers behind that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
All right, final trio. This is one of my favorite parts because every question is catered toward the guests, except the last one we asked every single one. The first one really was sparked by what you said to end right there a couple minutes ago, which is, what is, let me rephrase it. When you're at your best, when you're at your peak, what is the environment that you find yourself in, and how can you invite people to live more in that environment?
The environment I find myself in when I'm at my peak is a very clear vision of the wide vision, attuned to my person taking action towards that wider vision. That's when I'm the most passionate, the most in line, the most unstoppable.
Mm. And is there a practice that you'd invite people to help them get there more often in their day?
Yeah, you got to start in the morning. You got to start with the journaling. You got to talk to yourself and be honest. Yeah.
Amazing. Second one is, if you were an extraterrestrial that just came and visited planet Earth for the first time and saw the systems that humanity was running, if you had a magic wand and you were this extraterrestrial and you would change one system or one way of doing things, what would you do with that?
I'm going to go back to the original. If I could change the system of apathy into awareness, I would just turn that switch back on for everyone.
Yeah. What would you say, what percentage of the world's population is living in apathy right now, if you had to guess?
I don't know. Over 50%, that's for sure.
It's turning the dial, turning the needle. Amazing. The final question that we have for you today, Darin, is what we call the time capsule question. And this is a question that requires us to travel a little bit into the future. We're going to say 10, 15, 20 years down the line. And if I were to give you a time capsule and you knew that this time capsule was going to be opened by the next generation of world leaders, these are the next generation of people in business, in government, maybe hopefully a new form of government, the healers, the spiritual teachers, the authors, all of these people in leadership positions were to open the time capsule, and in there they would find your sort of toolkit, your guide to help them lead us into this new earth. What would you leave within this time capsule? This is literally like beyond your imagination. You could put anything in there. Some people have put in a frequency, a book, a teaching, a philosophy, anything that you could think of, but you could put it in this time capsule and it would be opened by the next generation of leaders. What would you put in there?
I would put humans and the planet and the animals first over power and profit. Always. Never change your trajectory from that, because you'll destroy yourself if you do. So I will, as a map, every decision has to come out of your heart, of what's right, of humanity, the people, the planet, humans, animals. And if profit and power are above that, then you'll just destroy yourself. So it's a map, I guess, from the heart, as a lead, rather than the destruction of power leading.
Powerful. Darin, man, brother, appreciate you so much for jumping back on. It's a pleasure to reconnect and just catch a vibe of where you're at, and hopefully just give you the best vibes, the best positive energy, because I know a lot of things are going on for you right now. So thanks for dropping all that wisdom, brother. Truly appreciate
it. Thanks for the questions. I'm late for my meeting, so don't mean to be blunt, but thank you. I really, you're an extraordinary human, and I'm grateful for what you're gonna do in the world.
Appreciate you so much, brother. Talk soon then.
Sounds good.
Much
Thanks,
love.
brother.
Ciao,
All right,
ciao.
bro.